open source volunteer-led movement which runs free, not-for-profit coding clubs for young people. There are by now, I think, over 300 around the world, and they are all very, very different depending on the demographics of the particular area that they're in. They're taught by volunteers, the venues are all donated, and there is also a very strong emphasis on open source and free software. So the reasoning behind this is essentially that computers are going to be an even bigger part of our future, and they're going to be a part of every aspect of our lives. At the same time, we really desperately have a shortage of programmers.
If WA is going to become a smart state, and there's already quite a few endeavours that are happening, like the square kilometre array, the IBEX supercomputer, that are here that will need skilled programmers, but are there going to be enough of them to make sure that our state is going to be able to take advantage of it?
CodreDojo WA is an initiative of the Fogarty Foundation with SciTech Melbourne Board as a principal partner. We've run for 2 terms this far, beginning at UWA, spreading to ECU. We're now thinking of expanding to some other universities such as Curtin and Notre Dame and some regional schools. So if you are interested in stepping up your commitment from being a mentor to becoming a coordinator of some sort within those universities, that would be fantastic and it would be wonderful if you could let me know. One of the things that we think is particularly fantastic is that we have a very high rate of both ninjas and mentors returning from previous sessions, and we now even have several ninjas who have elected to take on mentoring roles, which is exactly what it should be about. CodreDojo has one rule, and that is be cool. This means basically that bullying, lying, wasting people's time is uncool. However, as long as the kids abide by those basic rules, it's entirely up to them to choose what they want to do with the sessions. They can choose their resources, choose their projects, choose whether they want to work by themselves, in a group, whether they want to work with the guidance of mentors or as a mentor themselves, whether they want to build web pages, games, apps, or just work through online tutorials. The idea is that the sessions are supposed to be informal, grassroots, and fun. They're an opportunity to learn outside of the restrictions of the traditional school environment, so we want to try and make it as free and easy for the kids to engage with as possible. One thing that does sometimes happen, however, is that you may very occasionally find some of the ninjas try to use the workshop time just to play online games rather than, for example, building their own games. If this is the case, you just need to remind them that part of this one rule be cool thing is respecting the fact that the mentors are volunteering their times, the venues are volunteering their spaces, and a lot of effort is going into producing this free opportunity for them to learn. And part of being cool and being respectful is that they actually make the most of that opportunity. The objectives of CodreDojo are really just to introduce the ninjas to basic IT principles. We introduce them to some really basic, to the basic stages of programming languages like HTML and CSS, maybe some Python and Java. Everyone develops at a different pace, but we would love our ninjas to be able to feel like they've produced something at the end of the first workshop. So to, for instance, build a game or build a web page. We're now asking ninjas younger than Year 7 to bring a parent along with them just to help keep them on track a little bit. But we find that sometimes parents of older kids also hang around as well, which is fantastic. Some of them will also have attended a past dojo, so we have very different skill levels. And as mentors, you need to think about distributing yourselves accordingly. If you have a background in computer science, try and work with ninjas who are a little bit more advanced. If you feel you can offer them extension opportunities. If you're new to it, there will always be ninjas who have never coded before, and you can definitely help them out in that respect. There are 2 different sorts of mentoring roles that we have within CodreDojo WA, and just to get a big indication, can I have a show of hands for who has ever used Scratch before? Yes. Who has some knowledge of being able to code with HTML? Python? JavaScript? Fantastic, this is a very knowledgeable cohort. So the 2 different types of mentors are lead mentors and support mentors. Now, lead mentors take a bit more of an active role in running the sessions. So this might involve giving a presentation about an area of computer science that you're particularly knowledgeable about. In the past, we've had things like an Arduino hooked up to a bicycle, lots of discussions about hacking, about things like the traveling salesman problem, developer tools, the history of computer programming. So if you have an area of particular interest to you, or in particular if you have something that you can bring in, which the kids always find really exciting, then that's something that we want to be able to work with. We want to be able to use your skills. Now, support mentors have a bit of a different role. They tend to just wander through the workshop supervising ninjas, making sure that they're on track, helping them debug their code, and showing an interest in their work. So The support mentor role is designed so that you shouldn't need to have a knowledge of computer programming in order to do this. You should be able to learn along with the ninjas. Especially for our new ninjas, the best thing that you can help them to do is to help find solutions to their own problems. So this might just be encouraging them to carefully read over their code, to review some of the teaching material, to Google an answer to their question, to find a useful online tutorial. Basically help them to find the help that they need. At the end of your training pack, which you should all have received, you'll also find a debugging guide, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript cheat sheets, which might be useful if you're not from a programming background. CodreDojo also encourages the use of what they call the grandmother method. So this means that your role isn't to act as a teacher, it's simply to show an interest in their work. It's to ask them to explain to you how they built what they did, provide lots of positive encouragement, show admiration for whatever direction they've decided to take. And remember that CodreDojo isn't built around achieving a curriculum, but rather with providing the kids the space that they need to develop their own ideas and to feel good about whatever they produce. So the structure of the workshops is something like this. We would like you all to arrive approximately 15 minutes early in order to help set up. The first 5 minutes of the workshop, it's great if you can just circulate, talk to some of the ninjas and find out what their interests are and see if you can match them up to your own skills and your own interests. Today's topic is going to be the session which was run by the lead mentors. So that might be a particular presentation, somebody who's got a show and tell thing that they can bring in. Sometimes we also have presentations by external organizations. So SciTech normally comes in, we've had the homemade Segway and the 3D printer, which is all very exciting. Again, if you have any suggestions for any organizations that you know that might be interested in coming in to do a presentation, we would love to hear them because the more variety we can have, the better. So project time is then, that's about an hour long with a 30-minute break in between. That is either going to be a structured workshop or an opportunity for ninjas to work on their own projects, and we're going to try and alternate this a little bit. The break in between is a great opportunity for you to maybe show them a quick coding-related game or send them outside for a drink and a snack and a chance to talk to each other. After that, we have a section called Show Me the Code. So this is when we encourage ninjas to come up and show the group what they've been working on that week. So while you're going through the sessions, look out for students that have produced something that you think is going to be interesting for other kids to see how they made, or ninjas who are really proud of their work and you think would like to show this to everybody else, and then encourage them to step up and show you the code. So we should have about 20 minutes of that at the end. And then finally, take it home. So most of these resources are available online. Most of the time you'll create an online account so that all of your creations should be easily accessible from anywhere that you can log into a computer. So we really encourage our ninjas to also have a shot playing around with this stuff at home, which is obviously fantastic. We have a bit of a reward system, which is based around the structure of badges and belts. So we have a presentation day at the end of every session. We award ninjas badges as a reward for mentoring other ninjas, completing a Code Academy track, creating a website, creating a simple Python program, or creating a game on Scratch. So as you're wandering around, if you see a ninja doing some really good work, then let the coordinator of your particular session know about this so that they can then note it down and make sure that the ninja gets rewarded and thanked and appreciated at the end of the sessions. We've also recently introduced a concept called black belt ninjas. So ninjas who've been to more than one round of workshops will sometimes elect to be able to help to mentor new students. So this is really fantastic. This is what's ultimately going to enable us to make CodreDojo a self-sustaining thing. The final thing is dealing with advanced participants. So there will always be some students who have either learned a lot about coding outside of CodreDojo or have been to a few sessions and are finding the normal routine a little bit frustrating and slow. In this case, we really encourage you to get them together and try and get them to work on projects with each other. Also encourage them to come up with ambitious plans for things that they would like to learn and achieve. Discuss that situation with experienced mentors so that they can draw up an action plan and even potentially a customized sort of week-by-week structured timetable to help them get to their end goals. So we want people to feel like we have sufficient structure and support for them at all levels of this process. And then obviously encourage them to help mentor other students. That's a really important part of it. So Scratch is a really easy to use drag and drop programming language which allows students to very quickly learn some coding concepts like if statements, loops, and sequencing without actually having to learn a full-on programming language. So you can use it to create games, interactive animations, and stories. Once you've created with a project, you can then share it with the Scratch community. So for instance, if I go here to explore, I can see projects that other people have created. If I just click on one like this, I can then not only play the game that they've created, also see their code. So this means that if ninjas are interested in creating a particular type of program, they can look and see how other people have solved the same problems that they're trying to solve. As we do in real life, they can also go and steal bits of their code and incorporate them into their own projects. So as you can see here, we've got different loops, and this one looks like it's a bit disorganized. But there are some very full-on ones. There are people who have made full recreations of Angry Birds and Flappy Bird and all sorts of things like that. So the first workshop, as I said, is going to be scratch-oriented. So the idea of this workshop is that we'll suggest certain challenges to the kids. And so you'll pose some challenges. We'll let them have a shot at solving them first. If one of the ninjas manages to solve this challenge, so it might be, can you make your character move to the left and right using arrows? So, for instance, in this challenge, the sprite, when it's coded, can be moved to the left and right using arrows. So that might be your first challenge. And you'll see if any of them can solve it. If they can, that's great. They can do the rest of the class. If they can't, then you can demonstrate some solutions to them. It's worth remembering as well that in Scratch there are normally lots of different ways of solving the same problem, so they may well come up with different ways to you, and as long as that's fine, as long as it's not going to cause them any problems down the track, that's perfectly acceptable. And encourage them to share their different solutions to the same problem. The next resource that we have is Code Academy. Now this, for a start, is the one that I would suggest you have a look at if you're new to computer programming or need a bit of a refresher, and would like to have a look at some of these programming languages before we start. So there are a range of different programming languages offered here. If we click on something like HTML, CSS, we can see that we get 6, or well, more than 6, we've got quite a few different workshops. Now you should be able to, you could probably do one of these in half an hour, but the ninjas might take an hour to do one of these tracks, and that's fine. So they could do one of these little blocks each session, perhaps. So once we've done the HTML workshop, this is a really good place to send kids who are interested in learning more about those languages to try and consolidate their knowledge on their own. Apart from Code Academy, we also have CodreDojo, which, as I mentioned, has the 1 hour of code, which is fantastic. It also has lots and lots of inspirational videos. You can have Bill Gates explaining if statements to you, or who is the person that created Facebook talking about sequencing, things like that. Other programs like Rails Skills, which teaches Ruby on Rails, and then things, there should be a list of resources in your mentor booklets, by the way, which lists some other places that you might want to try. And then finally we have some games and things which we would suggest you might want to show the ninjas in either in the first sessions or in a little break in between. So this is Code Combat. This teaches JavaScript by playing a game, which is pretty cool. The final thing that I will show you as far as resources is concerned is the CodreDojo WA website. Now this is very new, so we have links to the sign-up pages for people who are interested. We also have resources, so if we click through here we can find learning tools. So this is a good place that you can direct ninjas if they're a little bit bored with what they're working on and want some new suggestions. We also have a section where ninjas can upload projects that they've created. So here we go. And people can comment on these, and then forums so that kids can also discuss problems that they might be having with perhaps outside of the coding session, so if they want to be able to have access to some sort of knowledge resources while they're at home. So that's the CodreDojo WA website. Encourage your ninjas as much as possible to put their own work up there, because that's what's going to make it really useful.
It's just a like a willingness to listen, I think, and to engage with the kids and to know the right time and the right question to ask them.
How do we make it cool? We don't really need to make it cool, I don't think. The kids kind of have this view of what they can accomplish from coding, and we kind of push them along the right track with that view, but they largely drive it themselves, which is awesome.
The best thing about CodreDojo for me was just kind of learning alongside the kids at the same time and watching them progress week to week.